The worst sound I've ever heard wasn't my own sobbing in a borrowed car. It was the deadbolt sliding shut behind me. I was 19, 6 months pregnant, holding a trash bag of my clothes, and my parents' words were still ringing in the cold air. Your choice, your consequences. We won't have a bastard under this roof. They didn't just close a door. They erased me. 22 years later, that same door is wide open, and they're standing in it, hands outstretched, asking for everything. My name is Alina, and this is a story about exile, survival, and the impossible calculus of mercy. Hello. Welcome to Hurt Stories. My childhood wasn't unhappy. It was certain. My parents, Richard and Gloria, were pillars of the community of their conservative church of a very specific, unyielding moral code. Our home was clean, quiet, and governed by rules as clear and inflexible as the lines on the kitchen linoleum. Love was conditional on obedience. Respect was demanded, not earned. And purity was not just a virtue, it was the family brand. I was a good girl. I followed the rules. I got straight A's. I wore the right clothes, had the right friends or the ones they approved of, and dreamed the right dreams. A good Christian college, a respectable career as a teacher or a nurse, a wedding in white to a suitable young man from a suitable family. My rebellion was so quiet it was almost inaudible. Dog-eared poetry books, scribbled drawings in the margins of my Bible, a secret yearning for a life with more color, more music, more maybe. Then came Liam. He was a year older, worked at the record store downtown, and had a smile that felt like a crack in the wall of my world, letting in a dangerous, beautiful light. He was everything my parents feared: skeptical, artistic, gently rebellious. Our relationship was a series of stolen moments, parking lots, library corners, long, whispering phone calls after my parents were asleep. He wasn't my damnation, he was my awakening. For the first time, I felt seen, not as a daughter project, but as a person. And in that seeing, I made a choice. One night in the back of his old Volvo, the careful architecture of my good girl life collapsed into a feeling so profound it obliterated fear. It was love, and it had consequences. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday. The 2 pink lines were a verdict. My first primal instinct wasn't fear of my parents, it was a fierce, surprising protectiveness. This was my child. Liam was scared but steadfast. "We'll figure it out," he said, his hand shaking in mine. We decided to tell my parents together, believing that honesty, however hard, was the right path. We stood in their immaculate living room, the air smelling of lemon pledge and tension. I delivered the news, my voice a thread. "I'm pregnant. We're going to keep the baby. We're going to be a family." The silence was volcanic. My father's face turned to stone. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, not in shock but in disgust. What followed wasn't a discussion. It was a sentencing. "You have killed our hopes for you," my father said, each word a chisel blow. "You have brought shame into this house." My mother wept, but they were tears of fury, not compassion. "After all we've given you, after all we've taught you, you spit on it." We presented our plan. Liam had a job. We'd get an apartment. I'd finish school online. We'd get married. "Marriage," my father scoffed. "A patch on sin is still sin. You think playing house fixes this. You have chosen your path. You will walk it, but not here." The ultimatum was crystalline. Terminate the pregnancy and stay, repent, and rebuild my life under their watch. Or leave. "I'm keeping my baby," I whispered, my hands instinctively cradling my stomach. "Then you are no longer our daughter," my father said. "You have until morning. Remove your things. Do not contact us. You are dead to this family." The deadbolt slide that followed Liam helping me carry a single trash bag to his car wasn't just a lock turning. It was the sound of my entire identity being severed. I was no longer Alina, daughter. I was Alina, pregnant, alone, and erased. The geography of my world shrank to the passenger seat of a rusting car, heading towards a future that felt less like a promise and more like a freefall. The first year was a blur of sheer, brutal survival. We were kids playing at being adults. Liam's parents, kind but overwhelmed, let us crash in their damp basement apartment. His record store job barely covered our ramen and prenatal vitamins. We didn't get married. The idea felt like a mockery, a reaction, not a choice. I was that pregnant girl in the GED class. I washed dishes at a diner until my belly bumped against the sink. We fought, terrified, exhausted fights about money, about fear, about the colossal weight of the life we'd created. When my son Jonah was born, the love was a tsunami. It was also an anchor. Here was this perfect, innocent being who needed everything, and I had nothing but a desperate, clawing love to give him. My parents' words echoed in my sleep-deprived brain. Your choice, your consequences. Jonah was not a consequence. He was my purpose. But the weight of providing for him, of being enough, was crushing. Liam tried, he really did, but the pressure fractured us. 2 years in, he left, not with malice, but with a broken whisper. I can't breathe, I'm failing you both. The second abandonment was different. It wasn't a righteous exile, it was a mutual drowning. I let him go, I had to. I had Jonah to keep afloat. So I learned to swim. I waited tables, worked night shifts as a hotel cleaner with Jonah in a carrier on my back. I learned to budget down to the last penny. I learned the hollow ache of hunger so my son could eat. I learned to patch clothes, plead with landlords, and smile through a soul-deep exhaustion. The world saw a young, struggling, single mother. I felt like a machine fueled by fear and formula. But in the cracks, my resolve hardened into something unbreakable. Every denied assistance application, every judgmental look in the grocery store line, every silent birthday with no family calls, it all built a spine of steel. I was not the girl they threw away. I was a mother, a provider, a force. I went to community college, one class at a time, Jonah in a campus daycare. I fell into the world of bookkeeping. Numbers were clean, they obeyed rules, they added up. They were nothing like people. By the time Jonah was 10, I had a stable job, a tiny, clean apartment that was ours, and a heart that had scarred over into a kind of fierce, quiet independence. I built a good life, a quiet, strong life. I built it without them. The scar of their abandonment never faded, but it became part of my topography, a mountain range dividing the before from the after. I married a good man, Leo, when Jonah was 12, a gentle carpenter who saw my strength, not my damage, and who loved my son as his own. We had a daughter, Maya. Our home was filled with noise, with art projects, with forgiveness, and with a love that was chosen daily, not demanded. I never spoke ill of my parents to Jonah. I told him they were very strict and they couldn't understand the choices I made. That is their loss. I refused to pass the poison of bitterness to him, but I also never reached out. The deadbolt worked both ways. To me, they were ghosts. Painful, foundational ghosts, but ghosts nonetheless. I built a successful small business, a bookkeeping firm that specialized in helping other women-owned startups. My expertise was born from knowing the cost of every single dollar. My reputation was for clarity, integrity, and an almost ferocious protectiveness of my clients' stability. I knew what it was to have nothing. I now helped others build something. To the outside world, I was Alina Reyes, business owner, wife, mother, pillar of my own making. No one knew about the girl in the cold, holding a trash bag. I had sealed that chapter in titanium until the envelope arrived. It was a lawyer's letter, dry, formal. It stated that my father, Richard, was facing a complex civil litigation that threatened to dissolve his assets, including the family home. His financial records were a mess, a lifetime of prideful self-management now a liability. The lawyer, having done some digging, found the daughter, who, according to her business profile, was a highly regarded forensic bookkeeper and financial strategist. They weren't asking for reconciliation. They were issuing a subpoena for my expertise. They needed me to untangle the knot, to testify to his financial habits, to save them from ruin. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it stole my breath. Leo held me as I shook, not with sadness, but with a white-hot, incandescent rage I didn't know I still possessed. Jonah, now a law student himself, read the letter, his face grim. "They have no right," he said, the protective anger of a child who'd always felt that absence. I didn't respond. A week later, my mother called. The number flashed on my screen, an area code I'd spent 2 decades training myself to forget. Her voice, older, tremulous, was a knife to the ear. "Elena, it's Mom. We need you. Your father, he's not well. The stress is killing him. Please, we're sorry." The apology was an afterthought, a prefix to a demand. It wasn't an "I'm sorry for what we did." It was an "I'm sorry, but we need something now." The moral calculus was immense. On one side, 22 years of silence. The cold curb, the words bastard and shame. The relentless struggle, the nights of terror. My son growing up without grandparents. The absolute categorical abandonment when I was at my most vulnerable. On the other side, an aging man possibly ill. A mother who sounded broken. A lifetime of work and a home on the line. A biblical, echoing command, "Honor thy father and mother." But what honor did they show me? What duty did they fulfill? This wasn't about forgiveness. Forgiveness is a personal journey, a letting go of poison for your own sake. I had, in many ways, already done that. This was about justice and about power. For weeks, I was paralyzed. I talked to my therapist. I talked to Leo. I walked the shoreline of my rage. And then I realized the question was, should I help them? The question was, on what terms do I engage with this history? I held all the power. They were petitioners at my gate. And that shift in perspective, from wounded daughter to sovereign adult holding resources, changed everything. I agreed to a meeting, not in their home, not in mine, in a neutral conference room at my lawyer's office. I wore my power suit. I brought my own counsel. This was not a family reunion, it was a negotiation. They looked small. My father, once a tower of judgment, was stooped, his eyes avoiding mine. My mother's hands fluttered like trapped birds. The air was thick with unspoken decades. They began with justifications. "We were trying to protect you. The church, the community. We thought it would wake you up." I held up a hand. "Stop. We are not here to litigate the past. You state your case, I will state my terms." My father, with a remnant of his old pride, laid out the financial disaster. I listened, my professional mind already mapping the chaos. When he finished, I placed a single sheet of paper on the table. "These are my conditions for providing forensic accounting and expert testimony. 1. Professional fee. You will pay my firm's standard retainer and hourly rate up front. This is not family help. This is a professional service. 2. Full disclosure. You will grant me unlimited access to all financial documents, no secrets, no protests about privacy. You lost that right. 3. The apology. You will write and sign a letter to Jonah. It will acknowledge him as your grandson, express your regret for your absence in his life, and take full, unqualified responsibility for your choice to exclude him. Not a justification, an apology. 4. No future claims. This settles any and all moral or emotional debts. You will not contact me, my husband, or my children after this matter is concluded unless explicitly invited." My mother wept, my father's jaw worked. "You charge us, your own family." "You stopped being my family," I said, my voice chillingly calm, "when you prioritized your reputation over my humanity. This is not family. This is business. Take it or leave it." They took it. The humiliation on my father's face was a dark, bitter balm. But this wasn't about vengeance. It was about valuation. It was about forcing them to acknowledge my worth in the only currency they truly understood: money and contractual obligation. The apology to Jonah was the non-negotiable core. It forced them to make the ghost real, to acknowledge the human cost of their righteousness. Working on their finances was a psychological minefield. Every receipt, every investment, every tax return was a record of the life they lived while I was fighting for mine. The nice vacations, the church donations, the home improvements, all happening in the parallel universe where I did not exist. But I am a professional. I built a dam between the hurt girl and the expert. I untangled their mess with brutal efficiency. In a way, I was the best person for the job because I had no sentimental attachment to their legacy. I saw it clearly, a house of cards built on pride. The letter to Jonah arrived. It was stilted, awkward, but it was there. The words "we were wrong" appeared. Jonah read it once, nodded silently, and filed it away. "It doesn't change anything, Mom," he said, "but I'm glad you made them do it." We saved the house. We structured a settlement that protected them from ruin. In the final meeting, my father, defeated and oddly humble, looked at me. "You did good work." It was as close to "thank you" and "I see you" as he could muster. I simply nodded. The invoice will be settled by the end of the week. As we parted, my mother reached for me, then pulled back. Could we ever meet for coffee, just to talk?" I looked at her, at the longing in her eyes, and I felt a vast canyon between us. "No," I said gently, finally. "I have everything I need. I wish you peace." I walked away, not with a healed heart, but with a settled one. The account was closed. They kicked me out when I was pregnant. Now they wanted my help, and in a way I gave it, but not as a daughter. As a queen, granting a dispensation from a throne they could never comprehend. This journey taught me that some fractures never heal, but they can become strong places, the place where we bear the most weight. Abandonment is a forge. It burns away everything that is not essential. What remains is a self, tempered and unbreakable. Success is not the best revenge. Sovereignty is. Revenge is still about them. Sovereignty is about you, your rules, your worth, your unshakable center. You do not owe your abusers access to the person you became in their absence. The person they need now is a stranger to them, built with bricks they threw at you. No is a complete sentence. Yes, on my terms, is a masterpiece. Family is not a blood debt. It is a daily choice. I built a family of choice, with Leo, with Jonah, with Maya, with friends who became sisters. That is my sacred circle. To anyone who has been exiled, discarded, or told you are not enough, your survival is your masterpiece. The people who cast you out do not get to critique the art you made from the ashes. Build your life so robust, so full of chosen love, that if the past ever comes knocking, you can open the door, not with trembling hands, but with the calm authority of a homeowner surveying a distant landscape from her own solid porch. You are not who they left behind. You are who you built yourself to be. And that person gets to decide who enters and on what terms. Always. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more story like this, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified.